Bagseed Chronicles is a podcast about cannabis and the people who enjoy it.
Bottle. I had the entire setup with no water. So I was like, all right, I'm going to give it a go.
Hello and welcome to the Bagseed Chronicles. I'm your host, Uncle Dig. I'm sorry that I was away. I had some health issues, but we're back on schedule. This is going to be the last episode of this season. Anything that I come out between here and December 1st is going to be bonus material. As you can hear, I've got some new chicks. I'll tell you a little bit about those in the garden update. And we also have an interview with the Instagram personality at The Real Bong Marley. So we're going to talk to him about what he does with his bong. So I hope you stay tuned. Now let's do a garden update. Uncle Dig's garden update. Hi, it is October 30th, 2021. We are in gardening zone 8B. Not that it matters because I have no living cannabis plants on my property. Everything's harvested. There's only a very little bit hanging left to trim. And I'm now enjoying the fruits of my labor. We got some new chickens. I know we talked last time about the untimely demise of Hilda, but now we have two new black star chicks. They're cute little goth birds. I hope one of them looks like they're going to be black, and one of them looks like they're going to be more red. They're a mixture of a Rhode Island red and a barred rock, I believe. They're super cute. They're probably like 2 or 3 weeks old, and they are just adorable. You can hear them here in the background with me. Of course, I'm brooding chicks in my studio because that makes sense. And that's what we're doing. So I'm probably going to pop seeds on December 1st, and we'll start up with garden updates then again. I may release some more content here on the feed, but it won't be about my garden because I don't have one right now. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still have the roses and all that stuff, but nothing cannabis related. Well, that's it for our garden update. Let's overgrow the world. Aren't they little cuties? Please join me in welcoming The Real Bong Marley from Instagram to the Bagseed Chronicles. The Real Bong Marley is known for taking things and putting them in his bong. Hi, we're The Real Bong Marley. Can I call you Bong for short?
Oh, y'all go right ahead, man. It works for me.
Welcome to the Bagseed Chronicles. How's your day going today?
Pretty well so far. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
All right, that's awesome. You know, I'm having a great day too. It's harvest season, and so me and a lot of the home growers around me are starting to chop their gardens. So we're all real excited.
I like the sound of that. means more for me.
Oh, hell yeah, hell yeah. Well, you know, we're mostly home growers around here. I do have some friends that are in the rec scene, but that's a whole different thing. What made you? Yeah. What made you decide to use things that are not bong water as bong water?
Honestly, it was just it was more of a convenience issue. So I was out and about, man. I went on a hike in the woods because my thing is I like to be in nature. That's where I feel most like at peace. And I had ended up bringing a Gatorade with me as opposed to an actual water bottle. I had the entire setup with no water. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna give it a go. So, I tried it. I mean, it was just the lemon lime one, so it didn't add like a whole lot of flavor to it, but it wasn't anything that was like terrible, something that I wouldn't do again. So, and then I honestly didn't even make much from it there. I didn't start doing it right away after that. I had actually seen another Instagram user, Weedbox420, and he was in the drive-thru and he had ordered a coffee from Dunkin' Donuts and put it in his bong and just like ripped it right there while he was waiting. And then so I found that pretty comical. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna see where we can take this. So I kind of just started playing around with things. And another reason was because like everybody, I feel like for a while everybody on Instagram was trying to do the same thing. Like everybody wanted that perfect bong rip, and everything started to look the same. You couldn't really tell anybody apart. Everybody had the same kind of glass. So I really just wanted to find a way to, to generate some growth, to get a crowd there, but also be something different. So I was like, why not, show the bloopers, make a fool of myself. And it works out pretty well sometimes. Like some of them do actually do turn out pretty decent. Others I would never do again.
Well, and it's funny you said you leave in some of the bloopers. Like, a lot of people that do big rips are real hesitant to show like the big rips that don't go. And
Yeah.
I think that's really important. Like people understand that when you're doing these big bong rips, they don't always end in a nice big, pretty cloud. A lot of times you end up coughing out like a really thin and almost dying for nothing.
Exactly. And I think that's honestly an important thing is to be as authentic as possible, very transparent because the cannabis community already fights enough kind of stereotypes. So I mean, I just feel like it's the need to be as real as possible and not like just keep perceiving ideas other people think or just portraying something it's not. Every ball group is not perfect in any way, shape, or form.
No, no, no. So you mentioned flavor. So some of the substances that you put in your bong, do they impart a flavor to the smoke, you said?
Yeah, so some of them actually do give a smoke. I found that the more pleasant ones that I found that actually would do something decent is like citrus juices, whether it be like orange juice or lemonade or just things very potent like that, or like even pineapple juice. Um, those actually hold a lot of flavor. Then there's some that are not so good. Like I know one that I I would never do again is the sardines. That one,
Oh
yeah.
no.
I don't know what got into me, but I decided, hey, might as well. What could it hurt? So I
Did,
did end up putting them in the bong, head and all.
oh,
Like, and so, it was a
I
pretty
don't,
big.
there's a couple of your rips that I've started watching and I see you show the container and I just skip it. I'm like, nah, I'm not even down for watching him do this. I don't want to think about this. And I think that might have been one of them. Anytime anyone talks about putting any kind of like blood or fish in the bong, I'm just not about it.
Yeah, I think that's where I found my limits. I've drawn it back quite a bit since then. Like, there's still some pretty off the wall things, like like some Alfredo or
Or
something along
soup.
those
You've done a
lines.
lot of soup.
Yeah, exactly.
You,
You gotta have something with the liquid base because sometimes when you do mashed potatoes, it's extremely hard to get some
I
airflow
that
through
one
there.
was so like funny and like gross to watch. You trying to rip it through mashed potatoes.
But you see, man, it's all in fun, It's like something people have never seen before, and it doesn't hurt anything. But like, what's the question I get asked quite a bit is like, how do I clean it? I'm not ready to divulge that secret just yet. But speed is a thing. Like you got to clean them right away. You cannot let anything set. I remember I had went with like some macaroni and cheese, but I used like the what is it called the artificial cheese product from Velveeta,
Oh
and
yeah.
yeah, it caked up so bad. Like no matter what I soaked it in, there was like nothing abrasive enough to take off everything. It was insane.
That's
And I
hardcore.
ended up not being able to use that bong for like 5, 6 days, like just some solid cleaning every day, just to kind of break down everything.
Right. So what about spicy food? I know I saw you one time you did something with Frank's hot sauce in it.
I did, and that's honestly like the only I would say spicy thing that I've done, and I probably wouldn't take it too much further than that.
Did it
The
hurt?
reason being, I don't want to risk too much like lung damage because that one did have a slight tingle to it.
Oh
That's why I
boy.
went. That one was relatively mild compared to a lot of hot sauces. That's why I kind of just dabbled with that one.
Yeah.
It's not something it was more essentially for shock value. But it did have a tingle, but I would not recommend that one at all.
Well, it had a shock value. I mean, I still remember it. It made it into my questions. I wanted to ask you specifically about that one.
Yeah, that's yeah. It's more one of those things. I did it more just to say that I did it, not really something that I'm proud of. You know.
Okay. So, do you ever do something like so gross? Like you do something in the bong that's so gross that like even if you get the bong clean, you don't even want to smoke that bong for a while because it just ooks you out.
So honestly, like I have a pretty decent bone collection, so I'm able to rotate them for quite a while. Um, but specifically with like we'll go back to like when I did the sardines. That one of course left quite an odor. That one's the only one that's almost made me throw up to date so far.
Wow.
That one definitely got to me. But I ended up like actually doing quite a few sessions with like mint tea, just to like try to try to match anything that may have been left over, even though I had
Oh
cleaned it
man.
seriously. I was like, I feel like I just need to permeate the glass with mint or something just to refresh it. So yeah, that's like I said, that's one thing that'll never happen again. I've found a couple boundaries. It took
Okay.
some exploring, but I've found my boundaries.
So spicy stuff and like dead things you're just not doing
Yeah,
again.
just I think anything along the seafood line is gonna have the same kind of feel for it, you know.
Yeah, yeah, I feel you. So like there's definitely like counterculture like avenue to what you're doing. Like you're in a lot of ways you're kind of having fun and showing people that weed is no big deal, but you're also using the apparatus not as intended, right? And I think there's a fun like merry prankster-esque element to what you're doing. And do you think that the cannabis culture at large is maybe losing that counterculture roots that I think we're all kind of celebrating a little bit?
I wouldn't say necessarily lose it. I just think that as the decades go on and just how the overall view of the cannabis community goes, I think that that definitely influences, what is more prevalent, because like depending even on what side of the country you're on. Because around here, like it's in Washington State, the medical program used to be, real gung ho. But then once legalization came by, it pretty much absorbed into it. They didn't really have too much outside of the recreational. So it was more like that was taking precedence, and that it kind of suits the atmosphere around here because everybody's just kind of free going and they just want to have fun. It's not necessarily a medicinal type of thing. Now I lived in Maine for the past 6 months, and they definitely, you can notice they care a little bit more about their small town growers, medical community. That's what they value a little bit more, just because of how their early recreational started. It's taken the plan of like, other states where it didn't go so well. It pretty
Yeah.
much took them out. They don't want to repeat that trend.
A
So
lot of
I think
activists look to Maine for inspiration now.
yeah, definitely. There's definitely a lot of deep roots in there for, people that are really passionate about it. And I definitely learned a lot while I was out there, put some things into perspective as compared to way over here on the West Coast. Things can be a little bit different.
For sure.
Um and also another thing that I'm doing, like as you noticed, with a lot of my content, I like to use, you know, uh household names, like a lot of the food items that I use and things like that. And the reason being is because like, it almost everything that I have used, as far as like a lot of these junk foods, the fast food sodas and candies and things like that, you know, you could argue that like the health benefits and everything are the same way and stuff like that, but none of this has nearly the taboo of, cannabis like that. So it's like if we can just portray that on the same level of, it's it is completely part of everyday's life, whether they admit it or not, they know somebody who indulges and they don't have a problem with it. So I think it's just a matter of like, you gotta force yourself into areas you feel like you belong. And people have told me, oh, why don't you try like the Weed Tube and all these other platforms that are pretty much specified for them, just so I feel more comfortable. But it's like that's essentially that's giving up on what I stand for. I want to make it as normal as, literally eating a sandwich. I don't even want to compare it to making it normal as alcohol, but you know what I mean?
Well, and I think that culturally on the West Coast that there's some interesting things that are going out here, but it's easy to forget that like the cultural mores are different in other parts of the country. And I think
Exactly.
by putting weed content on mainstream platforms, it puts some things into perspective for people in like, for lack of a better word, like the square culture, like for them to like pick up on like, oh, you know what? I saw one of those bong things in my Uncle Larry's garage, and Uncle Larry's not a bad guy. Maybe, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. It's important.
Exactly. I agree. And it's funny. So where I was pretty far up North Maine in Aroostook County, a couple miles from the Canadian border, and they, their beliefs were a little bit differently. So one of the commercials that were always on, they always have these commercials that are pretty much that are their slogan was like, just because it's legal doesn't make it right or something like, and it was pretty much like an anti-cannabis ad, you know, and it just seems unfair that you're able to portray these kind of things but not give the other opinion of something completely legal. You know what I mean? Like it's it's just boggling just that places can have that much influence that there's nobody to come to bat for the other side.
Oh yeah, well, I grew up in Texas, and like
Oh yeah, you completely understand, man.
there's a really listen, folks. I don't know if you know this, but there's a really healthy cannabis culture in Texas, but every node of it is isolated because everyone's underground. And that's not really cool because it's a barrier to education. Because look, I'm the first to admit cannabis isn't for everyone, but everyone should be able to see it and understand what it is and make that decision for themselves. By removing it from the public discourse and making it taboo, you're eliminating people's ability to make an educated, informed choice about what they put into their body.
Exactly. You see, and it's like I said, and that's how you break stigmas. Essentially, like I said, you have to force it into mainstream, just like anything else is. I mean, you got parents to complain about things forced on their kids. I mean, it's not necessarily forced when it's not. They were only seeing it from that avenue in the schools because it's too personal. But when the media and everything's portrayed, you can't control everything. So it's a matter of what they want you to be exposed to. Let me do my part. This is what I'm exposing you to. Let me change your view on these things.
Right. Yeah. And I think like there's a lot of like people on Instagram that are just having fun, that don't necessarily like think about what they're doing, that have huge following, and they're
Yeah.
accidentally doing that just by what they choose to do on their feeds. Not all of the like people who produce cannabis content that I follow, that's not even their primary thing.
Yeah.
It's just something that
And
they want people to know they enjoy.
exactly. And another thing is, like I said, there's always that fear on Instagram of being, disabled and removed for, who knows what. Considering it's all IA based algorithm now. I mean, you really got to tread on thin ice. I mean, I've been pretty lucky. I mean, compared to most, deleted multiple times. Knock on wood. Like I said, I'm still kicking. And one of the tricks is like when you glance at my page, I try not to make it so much look like a cannabis page, if you know what I mean. Like I'm showing more like the the container of these foods and such more than any flower.
Right, especially that beginning frame.
Yeah, I believe that helps a little bit, just as imagery wise, doing scans and such. But that's one thing that unfortunately it's I have to tread lightly with. I can't show I can't show a plant, or I risk them taking it down when tomatoes are just fine. You know what I mean? It's
Well, I'm lucky. I have a few different plants, so I'll take a picture of a cannabis plant, and then maybe the next post will be like me playing harmonica to a tomatillo, and then like
yeah,
so I feel like if you diversify what plants you're posting, the algorithm can't quite be like, oh because I
exactly.
don't
Because
think it's that
it's
smart yet.
never learning things. They haven't learned everything yet. I get that.
Well, and I think a lot of it's people reporting pages too. Like if you go into a hashtag with some cannabis
Oh, yeah.
content, like I've got, I think the first time I ever got like slapped, I think I got a post like, this is against your community guidelines. And then I don't know what happened. It like glitched out and then I was fine. It was weird.
Yeah.
But then it was fine again. But I don't use that hashtag anymore. I know not to go too hard when I hashtag, our podcast
Yeah,
or something.
and you see, that's one thing. Is like I essentially haven't used hashtags in probably about a good 6 months or so. Just for that reason. I know that's the reason. That's the primary reason is to to increase your reach as far as reach pages, they may not have ever seen you before and things like that. But it also puts you on a much bigger platform and much more risk. Like the shadow ban is a real thing. Like even if I were to use these hashtags, I don't show up in the hashtags. So it's definitely an algorithm based thing. Like once you've been reported so many times, they do start decreasing the avenues that your content is shown in. Like, I mean, it's if
Oh
they're
yeah,
not
for
following
sure.
you, they're not going to see you. It's almost like they've set your page to private for you, but you have no idea. And
And that's kind of why I like this medium that we're on now, this podcast thing. Cause like right now we're talking, I upload you to the service I subscribe to, I done all this groundwork. It just goes into all the directories. So it's searchable. Like I know I'm not going to be on New and Noteworthy, right? I'm talking and smoking weed on the podcast. I know I'm
yeah,
not going to end up in certain parts, but what's cool about this is if you search the title of this podcast in Google, it comes up and then you can just click on it and there you go. And that's
yeah,
amazing that I'm able to do that. And I think that that's really cool.
yeah. And you see, and that's essentially what I'm trying to get at is essentially turn my name into a brand of some sort. You know what I mean? What my dream really is to travel and spread my love of cannabis for people, have a little fun, make people smile. And that's what brought me to using a lot of the non-traditional elements in the bong that are not bong water. Is I like to make people laugh, and it just gives them something new to look at.
Well,
But I,
right.
I would love to figure out a way to just to really continue this, but be able to travel and just meet new people and just kick the shit with people, really, in a sense.
Yeah, that's an admirable goal. I think that I think now more than ever because cannabis is just a little more acceptable. I think more and more people are trying to live a similar lifestyle. I'm not as drawn to travel, but that's mainly because I'm a gardener, if that makes sense. I just
Yeah,
I
I hear
like
that completely.
I like to grow it. So growing it, I mean, bare minimum, you've got to be in one place for like a good 4 months, from seed to a good cure. And then it's in the jar and then you could go somewhere with it. But I think 3 to 4 months
Exactly.
is, and with the way cannabis are, laws are, I'm fortunate enough to own the land I'm on, or at least be paying a bank to claim that I own it. So
Yes.
I'm able to cultivate on it in Oregon, in the state I'm on. Whereas in some states, like or if I was renting, I wouldn't be able to do so, or there would be more hurdles for me.
Exactly. Saying it's nice to have that little bit more touch of freedom there.
Oh, and I wish that on a whole separate, like we could talk about the housing market and everything, but I wish that being a landlord wasn't one of the only way in our society to develop passive income into your old age, because I think
No,
one of the truly
it's extremely one-sided, at least on the West Coast. I mean, it's not meant for anyone but them to make money. That's unfortunately the name of the game.
yeah, and I would really like to see more people own the land they're living on, because people don't realize like our whole like country system is set up to serve people who own small parcels of land. And once you own your land, it's the system kind of starts catering to you in a different way.
Yeah,
And you have like this weird cachet that you didn't have before, that's completely like ethereal and makes no sense, but it's there. And I think that we either need to eliminate the like light prestige we put on land ownership, or we need to like change what land ownership means and how it works.
well, land ownership essentially in this country is for the elite. I mean, that's what you're trying to that seems the way that the game is being shaped at this point. So it's a sense of status essentially. That's really all it's been molded into, just with the how high prices have been driven and things like that. There's so much more involved than it was just being a working man and buying a home for your family just to raise them in. Now it's okay, I need this for an investment later, just in case something goes wrong, I have something to fall back on. Like,
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's been developed wrong.
So yeah, so back to cannabis. When you're doing the bong videos, Do you have a specific strain you usually lean toward, or a specific type of cannabis that's easier to get down through the food, or is it just use whatever you have?
A lot of times it does go around about whatever I have, but if like I say, if I pick up a certain strain and stuff like that, sometimes the strain itself will inspire me of like what type of things I want to go with, like the fruity strains or maybe a tart strain or something like that along those lines. It's a terpene thing, but yeah, a lot of times it just so happens to be what I have in the jar.
Okay. And so like so you've been traveling. You went from Maine to Washington, and I knew you were in Washington a little bit before that. And then I started following you, I think, when I think you might have been in Aberdeen somewhere. I don't remember. And then you went to Maine, and then you came back to the West Coast.
Yeah, so it sounds like you started following me probably right at the beginning of a road trip. Because I actually did the road trip across the country. It was about a 10-day trip driving across, and I stopped pretty much quite a few places, left some
Yeah.
stickers, turned up, that type of thing there. Yeah. So yeah, yeah. So I was in Washington for quite a few years, for pretty much predominantly most of my life. Then I moved there for 6 months and just came back. It's it's beautiful out there, but like I said, just what we spoke on, there's a lot of differences that you know out here just provides more opportunity for growth and just kind of stand on the game plan that I want to reach as far as establishing myself as a brand. I just
Yeah.
feel like bigger opportunities here, a bigger audience, bigger, people to choose from, that type of thing there.
Oh yeah, yeah. And you can accomplish a lot traveling, up and down the coast, and then,
Oh,
going
sure,
on
yeah.
little jaunts into the wasteland that we call the Midwest. Sorry, guys. Not sorry. Legalize it. Jesus, what is wrong with you people? You would grow some of the
That
best
is pretty
weed.
good.
You have all this sun, and some parts of the year you have dry air. You could grow great weed, but y'all don't want to legalize it. You could be the kingpins of everywhere, be the breadbasket of cannabis for everyone, but no.
Yeah, but that makes way too much sense. That's the problem.
But they're all running
It
around
can
like, we ain't got no jobs. The factory's gone. I'm like,
right.
you guys need to change your laws. You could grow enough weed to where y'all don't have to work that hard.
Oh, if only, man, if only.
I'm telling you, when they legalize federally and they start doing interstate commerce, that's going to change the game completely.
But you see, I'm all for federal legalization, but I'm still on the fence about whether the industry as a whole is ready for that because, just like I said, there are some states that have fared better than others. So I don't feel like this should be a thing where it just kind of drowns out, you know, anybody who tries this and make it just be a sinking ship for them, and only have like,
Well, that's
you know what I
always
mean?
been a horrible aspect to cultivation professionally.
Yeah.
Is that you're on thin ice, and I mean, from year to year, you could do well or you could fail. Um,
Yeah,
and
but
it
you see, once you allow that interstate commerce, you don't necessarily need to bring that whole corporation to like that specific state. Like if you have someone that's a grandfather company that's established in one state, like I mean, you pretty much take over whatever market you want from there. Like, and that's the part I'm saying. It's like you're at that point just making a bunch of say like just for sake of saying little Colorados or little Maines or you know what I mean. There's
Well, I
no
think
variance.
people are gonna be surprised as to which states actually do well
Yeah,
under
and that's
interstate
what I'm
commerce.
exactly. But I mean, that's the thing is like it could be a slippery slope. It could go either way. Just as far as the bigger people muscling their way in. That was my aspect there.
Yeah, and I think that that's to a lesser extent in every state that legalizes, that's going to happen. And I think as a culture, I think that that's why I'm doing this podcast. I think DIY, like doing a certain amount of growing yourself. Like I know that
Yeah.
not most people, I mean, and I don't even do it every year, are going to be able to provide for themselves, all the cannabis they consume, but if you can provide yourself even half of what you consume, you're saving so
Yeah.
much money. You're taking responsibility into your hands. And I think
Yeah.
if you live in the same place and you have the ability to either legally do so or the ability to be very valorous in the form of discretion, I think that you should take and grow some cannabis at home, because I think people will find that the product they produce at home will be equivalent or even superior to what they find in the dispensary. And I think that most home growers
Yeah.
are like nodding to themselves right now, like, yes, it's
Yeah,
much better.
I completely agree. But you see, and there's one aspect of with I-502 here in Washington State is that I think I think there was kind of a snag, that not necessarily a snag, but there was a loophole written in there that kind of kept it's barely keeping the medical community alive. And it's because we're the only recreational state that doesn't allow you to just home grow over 21. You do need to be like, your caregiver, have your
Yeah.
medical cannabis and such. So I think that is like their one way of you know maintaining that pulse that they have on the shrinking medical community out here. So I think once that kind of gets out the way, I think they're just being greedy at this point. They'll figure out, most people figure that out to grow at home, and they'll lose that commerce that they were, relying so much on, because it's been booming for, years now.
Yeah, I don't think home grow will cut in too terribly into the rec market. A lot of people thought it would in Oregon. They're like, well, why would people go to the dispensary if they can grow 4 plants at home? Well, because growing
Well,
weed
I
is
mean,
harder than not growing weed. And then,
exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's not yeah, you pay for convenience at that point. That's
and a lot of people do not have the time to either figure out an automated watering system or water every day and prune and go out and stare at the thing to make sure it doesn't have bugs on it. Not everyone wants, either wants or has the ability to get stoned and stare at a plant for 2 hours a day, which can be what it takes sometimes.
yeah, it's an investment of more than just money. It's your time and your patience, and you have to actually put forth that work ethic and educate yourself.
And you can fail. You can work all year
Yeah.
and you could do everything right, and you could get a mite infestation. And like this year I lost a half of one plant that I grew completely. Like I don't even know how high quality the smoke's going to be, because it got just I saw one bud that was like infested. I thought, oh, let me cut it off, I'll spray, it'll be fine. But they had already gotten a foothold and just bam, almost took the whole plant. I got about half of it. I was lucky.
Yeah.
And that happens when you grow at home. And that's why farming cannabis, a lot of people think it's going to be, you know um a magical like hippie experience. And honestly, at the end of the day, if you go out to learn how to grow cannabis these days, you're a farm laborer. You're going out
Yeah.
there and you're doing hard work. And it's not like people say it's easy. And it can be like a relatively easy thing to grow on a small scale. And it's still very labor intensive, but on a large scale, it's a lot of work to grow cannabis.
Exactly. It's a much bigger workload. And that's what I understand is people that it's one of those things where you definitely see what you get in, what you put in, you get out. It's if you put the time and the hard work, then you'll get your quality product. I mean, but most people, like I said, whether it be not the time nor if they have the drive, they say they don't want to commit to it.
Oh,
So
right. Well, and it is a commitment, once you start growing. And depending on what kind of like personality you have, it can kind of, it can define part of you, of who you are for a while, especially if you're doing it on a larger scale than maybe like your average home grower. Like I have a really weird size garden. I did 9 plants in 30-gallon pots. It's a weird size for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because it's not a big huge grow, right? But it's a lot for one person.
Yeah, but I mean, you got to do what you got to do. I mean, that's not that's what I'm saying. That's not for just one person to dictate. I mean, that's why there needs to be more education. This is a plan. Let's learn to grow. Let's educate people to grow on their own. let's change the ship.
Well, and I think autoflowers are changing the game a little bit too, because you can grow them in some conditions that you know the the regular photoperiod strains can't handle. Like an issue this year with a street light that made my plants, my flowers kind of underdeveloped because they didn't quite get the darkness they wanted. So next year, when I grow on that side of the house, I'm going to grow autoflowers because they don't care about the light as much. And
Yeah,
that's
you see, that's a learning experience. Everything is always a learning game.
oh yeah. So is there anything that you want to plug or tell the audience about before we get out of here?
Man, just like I said, we're about 300 followers out from 10K, man. So once I get to 10K, I have a lot more things coming. Like I said, I'm gonna try to essentially establish a brand, and that's where the merchandise comes in, and that's where I'm gonna start doing a lot more collaborations with other influencers there. I'm just trying to kind of get my ducks in a row here, just so we can get this going smoothly. But please tell everybody to follow me. I'm something different. We love weed.
Yeah.
It's something different. That's really all I can say. I like to put stuff in the bong. That's really all there is to it. Come find
All
out.
right. Everybody go follow Bong at the real Bong Marley and watch him put stuff that is not bong water in his bong. And everyone, thanks for listening to the Bagseed Chronicles. Let's overgrow the world. Thank you for listening to the Bagseed Chronicles. The bumper music is performed by Chad DeVilliers. You can find him on YouTube at Ukuleles Are Stupid or on Instagram at Chadwick Enterprises. Harmonica and guitar and any vocals are performed by Uncle Dig. I can be reached at uncledig4@gmail.com or follow me on Instagram at Uncle Dig.